and welcome to Game Master Swap. My name's Ethan, GM Ethan, over at StartPlaying.Games. I'm greeted here by Thom. Why don't you introduce yourself, Thom?
Hi, I'm Thom. I've been playing tabletop RPGs since I got kidnapped in sixth grade at a sleepover party, and I've been either playing or DMing ever since.
Yeah. I'm GM Ethan. I've been playing role-playing games for a number of years, and I haven't stopped doing it since. Uh, we are over here at GM Swap. We're having a talk show today, so we're gonna talk about what we do in terms of professional game mastering and what it's all about, and how maybe you can get involved or how you feel about it, and just kind of go over what's going on in the world. So to kind of get started, let's first start off with like what is professional game mastering. Um, I'll take it away with that just to start off. Professional game mastering, at least in my opinion, is any form of game mastering that you do where you're receiving some form of compensation. A lot of times you'll see this probably with conventions where you're receiving either free entry or promotional bonuses, other things like that. It's kind of the start to professional game mastering where you're receiving some form of compensation for what you're doing.
In my case, mainly I just kind of picked it up as a side gig just because I always enjoy DMing, but sometimes, especially with all the prep work, it kind of helps to know I'm getting a little bit of something out of it to do it. Be it my home game friends bringing in pizza or pina coladas or something else just to say, hey, thanks for GMing, or a bunch of strangers online saying, hey, we really just want to get our friends together and not have to worry about the GM work ourselves. We'll pay you some money.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting, like especially since COVID hit and everything has started to come together online, where like game stores have closed all over the place across the country, which has been super sad. And the businesses are struggling everywhere. This is like one of the opportunities that people have gotten more interested in lately because with free time and your normal game store either being closed or out of business, it's like, okay, I need to find somewhere else to be able to do this. And it's opened up a lot of different people to being able to try this.
I think that's why games like the Magic Gathering Arena really picked up this year too, especially with people able to do the card games online with their friends.
Yeah, it's a very different experience for sure because you're taking away uh, some of the bonding aspects that you get from having a friend group doing it. But at the same time, you get a whole different kind of game as well. You get one that sometimes people are way more invested into. Sometimes that people are just really devoted to necessarily, and sometimes that they don't have as much attachment to, so they're more willing to try things as well. Um, it's a space for not only being able to build really good connections in terms of character building arcs and perfecting different RPG elements, but also a place to just kind of play around with what you want to do because you're not necessarily as attached to the stuff you're doing.
Kind of bantering off that, like what you're saying. The On the other hand, because a lot of people had, if you're paying money towards a game, you're more likely to actually have the game be invested and have all your players. I think in the 3 months I've been doing this, I've only had two people who've had to miss sessions, and it was let us know in advance, and we already had a backup plan for who's piloting the character in their place.
Yeah.
So it's not like
And
that last minute morning beer flu scramble.
oh yeah, and it's you run into that a lot with like home games too. Where you're constantly like, oh, well, we need to do something about this, and it's like we still want to play because we set all this time aside, and
Yeah.
people's time is valuable, and putting aside like 2 to 3 hours every week to be able to play a game is tough. Actually, it's it's very difficult for most people to grasp how much time you're actually giving away when you do that. Um, Beyond all the other things that you could be doing or have been doing. Um, one of the interesting things that I've run into, at least because I play a game that's a little more unknown and a little more secluded per se in terms of its know-how and capability. And it's not as accessible to most RPG
Mm.
players because of the difficulty in it. And I've been trying to curtail that to make it more accessible to people who maybe aren't as versed in RPGs, maybe just aren't as good at constant math and having to keep up with so many numbers and so many crunchy things going on. That one of the things I've ran into is that I'll find players who want to play and start playing and then immediately switch to something else because they found another niche or another group. And that's kind of the fun thing that you get to do with the professional gaming is like, okay, I can go try a game out at least. And I
So
can give
it
it a
lets
chance.
us up all the one shots. What you're saying?
Yeah, a lot of one shots, but like I've had a few of the campaign people do kind of the same thing. They'll jump into a campaign and they'll be like, I'm excited to try this out. I want to keep going. But then realize, this isn't quite the right fit.
Okay.
And then find a different game. And it's like, that's a thing you can totally do. That's a thing that you can absolutely do with professional game because we don't necessarily care as much about you jumping in and out. We like to have consistent players because that helps with consistent money, but that's not necessarily always the goal. At least in my case, it isn't. But for most people on the platform, probably is.
Yeah, my end. A lot of what I've been doing is I've been picking up. I think I'm okay to mention this. The bounty board.
Yeah,
Yeah. There's a whole section for custom requests. So a lot of times there's these established groups who just want to find someone to play something or give their own DM a time off. Or we've had bachelor parties, birthday parties, old friend groups who haven't played AD&D since the '80s who've wanted to start it back up again. It's just really cool seeing how many people are just trying to get involved and just find someone to help them host the game so they can all have fun with their friends without the share of the work.
yeah, and it helps to really alleviate the burden of responsibility of trying to bring together all the tools all of a sudden and have somebody who's versed in them enough to be able to be like, all right, I can do this for you. And this is no skin off of my rump at that point. I have everything set up. And it's nice to be able to have that option.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the same option you get when you walk into a game store and they're like, "Hey, do you want to try out this board game?"
Or even like when they used to have the Adventurers League nights at your comic shops.
Yeah, I mean, like I did Adventures League for months, almost years now, actually, over at my local comic book store. And one of the things that they ran is a kind of compensation period where, like, hey, for every couple of hours that you play, we'll give you store credit.
Oh, nice.
And I built up hundreds of dollars worth of store credit because I was just constantly there doing it. And it was great. It was an absolute blast. It was kind of like the first touch of like professional game mastering that I did because it, number one, increased my want and value into what I put into my game. And number two, really elevated the capabilities of what I can do in a game. Because now I had access to store funds to be able to buy things that I would need to prop that game up.
Or just
And
pick up modules you want to try, but it's hard to get.
yeah, and it's just one of the best things had to be, at least with Start Playing so far, has been I started off with a game that doesn't have a lot of things to it, but there's been a great community out there that's been trying to keep it all together. And since I started doing Start Playing, I've been able to have funds to be able to make more models and miniatures from professional artists. So that's been an amazing thing to see happen. Um, Getting rules fixed and everything and being able to talk to people in the community who've worked on the game previously and were like, hey, let me adjust this for you so
Oh.
this makes more sense. Grimdark James, who had worked with Catalyst Games previously on the Battletech project, when I asked him about rules over at another Discord server that belonged to Ape Gaming Real, who does a ton of Battletech stuff. He's absolutely fantastic, so go check out his content too. He was able to give me some pointers and directions on things that I could change that would make it more functional for newer players, and kind of take away some of the crunchiness that was maybe not written correctly in a book necessarily, which was super great. And it's taken a lot of know-how to be able to fix the problems that were in the book, but by doing so, I'm slowly getting to the point where I can make it way more accessible to new players, which has been an awesome thing. And that all happened because of Start Playing Games, is I can make a game that was previously inaccessible more accessible to other players.
Yeah, a lot of my luck's been with occasional one shots or like I said before, picking stuff off the bounty boards. I've tried to get some bit of Shadowrun garnered interest wise. I think it's either a case of I've gotten a few like it's been shared around, but not many people are signing up on it yet. But on the other hand, I've got an AD&D game that's been going, and I hadn't played AD&D since last time I would have played prior to last year would have been 2004, 2005. So the fact that I got to break out that old source book again was really made me smile. And
Yeah.
then I even broke out the the Wendy's gag RPG for a fun one shot during the Wisdom Save weekend back in November.
Oh man, that's it. That had to be fun. I mean, like, and the other thing is like professional game masters. Like, how do we do this exactly? Like, so start playing games is where we're both from. Um, but like professional game masters abroad, like as a broad topic, is like you're being compensated in some way for your time. Essentially, is what it is. So, how do we do it versus what you think maybe most people think of? How do you think we're different? How about that?
Hmm.
That's a better version of that question.
I mean, I think I've heard this point said before by Devin too, but one of the things is like being a professional game master is the only difference between us and a regular game master is the fact that we get paid for it. I think a lot of your home game GMs still do as much work as we're doing. They'll put a lot of effort into it, and they just want everyone to try to at least get together and enjoy the experience. The main difference is that we're getting paid for it, and because of that, we can kind of take a little bit of extra time because of that, and put a bit more investment into it.
Yeah. Uh, at least for us, in terms of the way that, at least I do it, you know, I start by, garnering attention towards a particular campaign or one shot and then seeing what interest comes into it. Once I have a pool of people who've come into it, who've signed up for the game, then I can begin the first steps in the process of getting started. So one of the things that I started doing recently is introduction like series for different parts of the game, including game mastering the game itself. Um, Being able to do like a Solaris Arena one shot like we did previously last week, and putting that up there to be able to have people go in with pre-gens, understand the game first, see if they want to pick it up and continue. Um, it's free content that then people can make a decision if they want to continue playing it. Hey, here's the fee to keep going. For some other people, it works completely different. Some of them are just doing just straight paid games, right?
Yeah, I don't think I do that much on the pickup end. I've had a few instances where I'll note what's happening, and I know with any of the events and such I do, there's gets a lot more attention around because they're sharing it around more. But most of my paid games have come from either finding existing groups or picking up something from the bounty board and doing a one shot with it.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of it comes from custom games that people want, and the general sharing of groups that are already out there that like want something specific.
And it's nice to see the custom requests though, because it's also nice to know what people are looking to play. Like just even gauging off that, I've had two custom groups that ended up becoming full time campaigns that from a one shot.
Exactly. And so there's a wide range of stuff that we do basically, essentially, from customized stuff and being able to have popular particular opinions, um, and popular systems that people want to try out, and being able to get an exact like what you want is one of the things that makes professional GMing so interesting, because not only do you get what you want, but you're getting it at a point where, okay, I have an invested interest in being able to deliver that. Whereas most game masters you get at home games are building off of what they necessarily want to provide,
Mm-hmm.
and are taking player input sometimes. Because at some level, yes, we do have an invested interest of what we want to play. Being able to have groups that connect together, they both have similar interests that just connect. And it's kind of like matchmaking with the two of them.
Maker, matchmaker, match me a match. So, oh, another thing is cool. Whenever a new system is coming out, one thing SPG is working with. I don't know if you're on this at all, Ethan, but Burn Bright recently is doing out its playtests and releases. So anyone
Yep.
who's if it's a brand new system that you're not too sure how to play it or if you can even play it, we were given I think a 2 month pre-release time to go over and read through some of the rules of Burn Bright and kind of be prepared on Roll20 with their assets to play with it. So by the time that it's being released to people who are wanting to play it, we've already got a bit of a lead in on how to GM, how to prepare, and we have these games existing and ready to go if you want to try it out.
Yeah, which has been amazing. It's been awesome to see. I haven't particularly gotten into it in terms of the pre-gen of it because I've been so focused on other realms of stuff. Uh, Unfortunately, one of the things of being a part of a niche group like that is a lot of times you have a lot more to focus on because you have other tools and aspects you have to work on. At least from my case, because
Mm.
I don't have a lot of built-in tools like Roll20 does. Because, well, let's go into the tool topic here. um, there's a ton of different tool sets out there for not only professional game masters but for people at home who just want to play and to get into like Roll20, BTTT, um,
Foundry.
Foundry, Tabletop Simulator, which is what I use. um, there's just a number of host things. I mean, like World Anvil, you can host a whole game off of that if you wanted to.
And then there's other
Um,
people who just who just get a bunch of cameras on a real board with painted miniatures and do it that way.
and just run it that way. Yeah, I mean that's a real thing, and it's it's really interesting to see the different ways that people have done it. The tools aspect is kind of funny because everybody has their own way of doing things.
Hmm.
And so you get a little, if you get a little taste of everything that everybody's doing, especially talking around with the other GMs on Start Playing through the Discord, everybody has a different opinion of what to do.
Yep.
And so you get to see the widest range of styles. And if somebody doesn't necessarily fit your style, there's always somebody else. There are tons of people out there who want to run games, and there are tons of people out there with different GMing styles that will either fit you or maybe not fit you, or that you can request for something specific.
Hmm.
It is an insane amount of depth everywhere of different stuff. And one of the nice things is the amount of collaboration everybody's done in terms of learning off of each other and being able to get different things from different people and understanding, all right, this is what I want, or this is something I do one way that might be a little bit easier. And it's been extremely humbling to see how sharing everybody is.
Yeah, I really enjoy just watching some of the discussion too. There is a bit of a fierce debate between Roll20 and Foundry. It's actually kind of funny to see. There's either outright hatred for Roll20, or you got a few of the old guard like me who I came into Roll20 when it first opened with a bunch of my college friends after I graduated, and it was the best thing I ever experienced. So I've just been using Roll20 for so long that changing something else is just weird for me.
Yeah. And like, and me, I'm like third party. I sit on the sidelines. I'm like, you guys do you. Like, particularly, I never used Roll20 because I was like, okay, I don't necessarily want to pay for my subscriptions or anything, but like, if I could build my own models and be able to do my own thing, that works for me. Tabletop Simulator will let me do that, where it's like, okay, here, input your models here, do your own scripting, do your own writing. There's a lot more work involved with it, but it's rewarding in the sense that I get a very uniquely what is mine.
And it looks really freaking cool.
Yeah, because it's also 3D models that you can camera around, pan, do whatever you want, which is a nice change, but it also functionally works super well for the particular game that I do because it's based off of wargaming, which means that you need to have that large board size. You need to be able to, switch things out quickly. You need to have 3D space because everything is done in a 3D space to begin with. Whereas like something like Roll20, it does have the stuff in there to be able to do it specifically for BattleTech, but its depth is not as taken care of as it is on Tabletop Simulator.
Yeah, I definitely could see the limitation on 3D, especially as Roll20, because it's an overhead flat surface,
Yeah.
which works great for D&D, Shadowrun, and other anything else that requires like a simple overhead map. But anything where you're gonna need your 3D wargaming, I can definitely see the benefit of having your actual 3D workplace.
Yeah, and it's one of the unique differences there.
Should we go over to what's popular and why?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Let's go over what's popular.
So obviously 5e is the big one. That's the
Mhm.
most games I see. Even like some of the offshoots of 5e, Kobold Press's Mythgard has a few pickups. There's a Monster Hunter 5e. I think someone was running Star Wars 5th edition the other week.
Yep, there is a Star Wars 5th edition. I did see that one.
And I run Adventures in Middle Earth, which is based off of 5e. Just the harder, what do they call it? Gritty realism rules.
Yeah, the gritty realism.
Gritty
I think
realism and low magic, essentially.
yeah.
Um,
Well, that's what like D&D 5e is the popular edition for a number of different reasons. That's led to its catalyst of being like, okay, this is a great game or a great game system for a Roll20 system that's easy to just hack other genres and themes.
oh, yeah, it's what's the word? Is modular the right word? What do you think?
I would say modular. Yeah, it's got a lot of like loose ends that you can plug in with more stuff. So it's very modular, and I can add something in. One of the interesting things that I started running recently for 5e in a home session that I'm playing around with still and trying to get a little more refined is spheres. Some people might know it from Pathfinder, but spheres is a type of separate system that allows you for a lot more modular building of characters based off of archetype settings, being able to do big, bad, and cool things all the time.
Oh,
It's really interesting, and I've been playing it now for about a year and a half in Pathfinder. And so they brought out a 5e one about 6 to 7 months ago or so, playing it as part of a home game, combining 5e, Gestalt, Myth,
oh. Now, Gestalt's the
and
one that the old 1e multi-class rules, right? Where you're basically leveling two classes at the same time.
yeah, it's and that's what Gestalt is multiclassing two classes at the same time. That doesn't affect your level in terms of its cap, essentially. So you get to be two things at once. It allows for interesting builds, things that build off of each other, stuff that's really broken, stuff that's really not broken. And there are options and rules in spheres that let you basically build all new characters outside of the realms of basic 5e, but still use the standard rules.
Okay.
So the classes are all different, and the class features are all different, but the basic concept of the rules still remain the same. So it definitely makes 5e a really hackable system, very modular and very easy to use in that sense, which makes it super popular. I know that basic RPG is another one that's been getting a lot of love lately. Burn Bright obviously is booming right now.
Yep. I know. Oh, what's it called? Fate's pretty nice because it's one of those ones you can just pick up. It's 2d6 and a few basic stats, and less about the actual. It's not really about what stats you have. It's more how you want to approach a situation with those stats. If that makes sense. So you
A lot
can
more
try to you can try to approach a situation cleverly, cautiously. You can do it like completely flashy, and as long as you can find a way for it to make sense, you can make it work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, for sure. Fate is definitely a system where you're doing a lot more narrative storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
You're handing a little bit of the reins of the GMing role over to a player, which is a super interesting concept, if you ask me. Haven't gotten my hands down to playing that yet.
I've got that one on my list at some point, so we will try that.
Yeah, so you can see it here on GM Swap.
Ha! Insert plug here.
Yes, plug.
Some of the D6 systems work very well, like with BattleTech, like with I want to say Shadowrun, but that's another one that like gets a ton of rules. The initial core rulebook is 500 pages.
Yeah, I mean, like BattleTech's the same way.
Yeah.
It's 410 pages. It's ridiculously big, but half of the rules are optional, and it's like, like a third, 3/4 of the book is just lore built into it, which is kind of a little annoying. I love lore books, and I love little bits of lore in my rule books, but there are entire pages dedicated to lore in the BattleTech rulebook, and it is the most frustrating thing in the world. And I really wish they didn't do that, and they just made a separate lore book that might have had some additional rules in it. And it's like, hey, if you want lore and a couple of rules with it, here you go.
That's what Catalyst did with Shadowrun. They actually published an entire source book just for the city of Seattle.
Well, you know, they had their hits and misses.
Yeah. Dungeon Crawl Classics is another one that's picked up popularity.
Oh, I haven't heard about this one yet.
I've not played it myself. Essentially, it tries to go back to some of your older style, where D&D is very much save or die rather than save or suck, if that makes sense. So it kind of brings back a lot of the initial traps are vicious. Monsters can be deadly, and a single critical hit could end you at that moment. It also brings back a lot of the older grimdark themes.
Yeah, which, me personally, this is my personal take on it. Grimdark fantasy is my kind of fantasy. I like gritty reality, but built into a fantasy world. Yeah, I've got magic to heal people and to save them and other things like that, but not all the time does it work. Not all the time are things so easy. Sometimes you just die.
Yeah, Dungeon Crawl Classics actually has a system of if you try to cast healing magic, you still have to make a roll to pass the spell, and if you fail, you actually hurt them instead.
Yeah, and I think it's super interesting. I mean, it's the same way in BattleTech, where you fumble on something, something gets broken or hurt. Because when you make mistakes, other people suffer. BattleTech is very interesting, though, because of the sense of criticals mean something. Criticals really do mean critical failure. Things will catastrophically begin to fail as soon as you get one.
I really like that scene. I was like peeking the chart. I was peeking at the chart when you were referencing it the other week.
Yeah, it's got a list of things that go down the line, and that, you know, when one thing fails, another thing fails, and it can build up and completely incapacitate you really quickly.
And on the other side too, on the other side of the table from the player's side, you get to do really cool stuff when you get the critical.
Yeah, absolutely. And suddenly the tides of battle can completely change if, you know, something super awesome and heavy mech comes at you and you're just a little bit of light mech. And then you get one good critical shot and then suddenly they're on the floor. They're like, I'm done.
Warlock says power of the dice.
Power of the dice indeed. RNG is life. Feel like that's what all game masters live by.
So here's a topic. Speaking of other games, kind of like using various game systems. Have you like paired off elements of other games into your existing games to kind of like make them better or improve, like various home rules and such?
Yeah, I mean, let's see, what's the best example I can give? I think the best one that I've gotten so far is, at least for BattleTech side, I'll give one for BattleTech and I'll give one for D&D. BattleTech side is being able to simplify and straighten out the math for doing like post-game wrap-up stuff. Because a lot of BattleTech leaves a lot of homework at the end for the GM in terms of post-game wrap-up stuff. There's a lot of stuff that you should be asking your players at the end of the game in BattleTech where you're like, hey, did you want to do this, that, the other thing? Make these 30 freaking rolls about all this salvage and other things that you're going to do. Instead, being able to simplify those down, make the numbers and math more clean in it, and just make everything divisible by 5. Because everything in BattleTech is mostly divisible by 5 on the tabletop side. So why not do that to the actual role-playing game? For the D&D side, however, I've picked up a ton of great homebrew rules that I've used here and there for different games dependent. The only issue I necessarily have with homebrew rules in D&D 5e is you usually end up with a lot of them because everything in that system feels kind of vague in some ways.
Yeah.
It's left to the GM or the players to decide what you want to do with it. And that, you know, in the end, you decide. It's just kind of, it feels like a framework half the time, and that the rules are not as concrete as everything wants to be.
Small point on that one, actually. One thing I've kind of noticed with 5e is there's occasional throwback to older rules that they just kind of brought over without kind of clarifying why. One example I like to give is the passive perception. It's actually based off an old rule from 3.5 called taking 10, which basically is if you're not being threatened or distracted, you can just, instead of rolling the d20, you just calculate it as if you roll a 10.
Yeah.
So, like, just like, but without any sort of clarity, passive perception is like, okay, is this just what I'm always constantly seeing, or is it can I just choose to take the check without making the roll? And a lot of times it ends up being up to DM discretion.
Yeah, and it was very vague in explaining that you can take 10 on other things. There is things such as taking 10 and taking 20, and it is written into the Game Master's Guide about taking 10 and taking 20. It leaves it down to the GM to decide. And then in vice versa, it also leaves it to the rest of the table to decide too, because they have to agree to the rule just as much as the Game Master does.
We have a question from Via Virtus.
Yeah.
It says, simplifying a game. Are you clear about those simplifications and modifications in the template and or adventure info?
Okay. Do you want to start with this, or do you want me?
Trying to breathe with what else here. Are you clear about those simplifications, modifications in the template and or adventure info? I'm trying to think what an example here would be.
So in this case, what he's asking is, do you clarify in your templates or your games?
Like I gotcha. In the actual adventure information.
Yeah.
Usually, I've got a standard set of rules I like to use with. I'm gonna give 5th edition as an example because it's gonna be the most relatable for most people. The main rules I tend to use, and I'll put it in my initial recruiting information when someone signs up for a game. I'll use a rule called Crits or Kings, where if you roll a critical hit, one of your damage dice is always maximized. That way, your critical hit feels like a critical hit. I use Glancing Blows, which means if you meet something's armor class instead of exceeding it, I'll half the damage. Same goes for the player. So if something meets your armor class, when you're describing your game to potential players. Oopsie. I guess I'm gonna continue.
I mean, that kind of works the same way because
yeah.
It's in the recruiting notes, which means that like when you particularly put that out there, it's going to be reflected on your adventure necessarily.
But I think even like describing scenarios, like with I'll try to summarize like the gist of what the adventure is going to be. Even for like a simple topic of this is the summary of what the modules will state on it.
So for me in particular, I don't necessarily list that up front if there's any simplifications necessarily. I deal with that in session 0, which is, hey, this is session 0. We're going to discuss everything that we want to have in this game, everything that we want to do in this game, because of the fact that, particularly in BattleTech, there's a lot of optional rule sets. There's a lot of things that are considered optional. But the one rule that I do have as a caveat when I first enter a game with anybody, and I usually send this in a message before they sign up, is, hey, the way that we're going to work with optional rules is if you choose to want to use an optional rule, that then unlocks it for the rest of the game. Not only can you use it, but now your enemies can use it. So it gives you a one-time advantage, essentially, over an enemy in that particular situation. But quickly come back to bite you, where it leaves that sense of like, okay, I have a chance to do something heroic and interesting, but later on that might come back to bite me because now my enemies know how to do it.
It's like the old tossing flour towards invisible people. Suddenly your own invisibility spells get really messed up really fast.
Yeah. And it's like, well, now you can see them, but now they know you can see them.
Also, congrats, Virtus.
Yeah.
And one other thing I like to do is there's a whole lower section in the actual at least if you're on SPG. There's the initial game intro itself, and then there's the additional details. Sometimes I'll summarize some of those additional details in that first part, because sometimes people will see the initial description and see game availability, and then they'll kind of stop scrolling there. So any sort of information you can put in the above really helps.
Oh yeah.
So anything from like from your general disclaimers to rules you like to use, or even the fact that you have pre-generated characters available is really helpful. Because sometimes people don't scroll down to the how will character creation work. Sometimes they'll just look at that first section and stop there.
And a lot of times through marketing research, you'll see that most people don't tend to scroll down on an advertisement unless they really, really care about it. So they'll usually read whatever fits in the first couple of lines. So it's really important to be able to get the most stringent pieces of information first that people would be interested in. And then having your details listed underneath that of maybe going more in depth of what you're saying in the beginning. At least that's how I'd go about it.
Let's see. Oh, speaking of, speaking of templates, tools of the trade.
Ah, yes, tools of the trade. So, well, obviously, StartPlaying.Games is the tools of the trade for us. Templates. So templates are weird, but they're interesting. There's a lot you can do with it. But the biggest thing is understanding where all the information is when you put up a template. The best thing I can ever suggest for anybody who starts doing this as a GM is to preview your template of what it looks like. Because you will find out very quickly not everything is where you think it is.
Some of the back end, I know, even if you don't have, I don't think they have, what's it called? They don't have BCC, BBC, the text code.
Yeah, yeah, the
Yeah,
text code.
they don't have
I
text.
don't.
Yeah, they don't have that or Markdown enabled yet. But even just like doing things like making a little dividing line, putting your bullet points out, it really anything you can do to clean it up, even from the simple visual end, really helps to get your points across and get your game information out.
The other thing is being able to use you know, catching text necessarily. Something that goes beyond the word itself, but being able to have visuals such as dashes, bullet points, other things like that. It helps to make your advertisements look really professional. Because it means you took the time and care enough to actually put that stuff in there.
Yeah, your formatting can matter.
Will matter.
Oh yeah. Then some of the back end stuff. Visuals, sound, anything you're using on the template is required to either be something you've licensed yourself or something that either SBD does have a few stock images that they can license out, and or things that are essentially copyright free.
Yeah.
A lot of my sites have I've noticed there's a lot of what's it called? Sorry, Creative Commons use that you're able to look through. Anything from the base stock sites like Pexels, Pixabay, and Unsplash, or your free sound sources. There's a free sound, there's the free music archive. Some of them are Creative Commons with attribution, so you do need to watch out for that. But anything you can get grab, like additional sound effects, things you can throw in the background. Yeah, Warlock notes get a logo, branding matters in the long term. So even and even just having a good profile picture helps. You know, you just I've seen a few people just jokingly posting themselves in masks, and it's fun for the pandemic. But my signature newsy cap photo I use for a lot of my general profile pictures, and that's just served me well for like I think 4 years now.
I just made a dumb face, but that's because it was from like if you go to my profile on StartPlaying.Games, GM Ethan, you will see my really dumb face from me on the beach at one point, and I thought that would just be a brilliant photo.
I just thought that was your
totally
model pose.
encapsulates. Yeah, and I just shaved too, so it looks nothing like me right now.
I think Sun, who also plays, he's like doing the Batman in the shadows pose.
But yeah, I mean, like for me in particular, for BattleTech though, a lot of Creative Commons is important because BattleTech is owned by so many different franchises and other companies. So I have to be very careful with what I'm picking. A lot of the stuff I have to get from Catalyst specifically because it's under the Creative Commons grounds and they have the creative license to be able to be like, hey, you can freely use this with, you know, certain things. In addition to that, one of the other interesting things is being able to licensable music. Is a little bit tough, especially for BattleTech. But luckily, there's such a broad community out there that has free options of music from YouTube and other sources that they've created that's specifically just for like, hey, use this for your games, use this for this. It's under Creative Commons and copyright free music. which has been super nice because it's all BattleTech specific stuff.
That's cool.
There's a great community out there specifically for this game. It's very undergroundish per se, but it's just they have a real passion and love for it, and they just don't want it to go anywhere. But all these companies keep tearing it to shreds.
Oh,
one of the creators of BattleTech was like, "I just wish it would die."
Oh. All right.
And it's like, no, we love it.
So they're like, why? There's some links for you there. I know the Shadowrun community doesn't really have too much in terms of the art and music side. There is an entire section that they'll make entire fake chat rooms, like in the Shadowrun world. People just like role playing out. And a lot of times in my setup, I'll try to find some of the more interesting ones. Like they do a whole they even do like a Monday night poetry slam that they'll have an admin jokingly ban people for. Because poetry is banned in the Jackpoint Shadow forums because of quote unquote the Laughing Man incident of 2055, and no one in Shadowrun canon has ever explained what that was, but only that I just know the Laughing Man is the handle for a ancient elf from the third world known as Harlequin. But that's all I know.
That's great. See, I love these little community things too, and like one of the nice things is that a lot of professional GMs are like super fans of their systems. Yeah. We're just people of the community, just like anybody else, and it's amazing to be able to connect with people also out there who love it. It's a platform to be able to connect, and it has some monetary exchanges with it, but like most other places with advertisements and other things like that, it is still, a way that people are just improving the economy and doing their own thing. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. But maybe one of the things we can talk about is some stereotypes.
Ooh.
Let's talk about those. Let's talk about the stinging stuff. Okay. Do you want to start with stereotypes that you've heard?
Let's see here. I know for a fact that going to Reddit sometimes does not go well for anyone trying to get money out of a game. Sometimes they will dogpile you.
Oh yeah, Reddit's usually pretty quick to attack people.
Which is hilarious because my favorite Shadowrun community is in Reddit, and they are cool. It's just the D&D side is just fish.
And I feel like this comes from a place of like older gamers who are used to the community side being a free and open platform that they bought the game and they sat down and played with friends. I think part of it is the understanding of, hey, this is a different platform. This is one that needs to be managed and needs to be maintained. But just like any other game, you may have been giving monetary exchanges that you didn't know about.
I'd say even conventions.
Goods. Yeah, like conventions.
I've paid to go to a convention and deprive myself of sleep for 72 hours just to play tabletop games for as much as I could. But even then, it's still a monetary exchange, and I know the GMs there were essentially GMing to get free entry to the convention, but still.
It's still an exchange of goods, or exchange of goods and service, which means that there is still the same thing that we're doing here. It's just more direct. And that's part of the translation, I think, that gets lost there, is that, hey, this is just without the middleman, per se. And not to say that conventions are bad or anything. It's just...
Well, I mean, right now they are.
Without the convention. Well, yeah, because of the situation. But that's not to say that conventions are always bad for doing that. It's to say that, hey, conventions are a different format of this. Oh, and it's a kitty.
Okay, hang on. Obligatory cat.
Yes, obligatory cat post. Aww. All right, now that we've all been derailed by cat.
Like any good phone call.
Yeah, but conventions aren't a bad thing. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that this is just a different format. And it's a choice that people can make. They can decide whether, hey, I want to give this a try or I don't. I think it's worth taking a look at least for the free side of it, because there's tons of free games too.
Yeah, even people just trying to run the new intro games for anyone who is, if anyone has like friends who haven't played D&D yet or just want to try out a new system, a lot of those free intro games are great just to even see if you'd like it, which is great.
Yeah, and the community here is encouraging. They're people who are devoted to this and want to make it better. It's it's people who really want to play tabletop games, and I think that's in most spaces. Is it's people who want to play tabletop games. They're not trying to run you a grift. They're not trying to eke you money. They're trying to play some tabletop games, and I think that's 100% where it comes down to is that people are concerned of grifters, they're concerned of moochers, they're concerned of what am I really getting in terms of a guarantee of service
Mm-hmm.
in doing this. And I think part of it comes down to your decision of who you pick, what you think of them, and how you interact. And that also provides to the DM as well and the GM that they have to have some level of expectation, not only for themselves, but for those players too. And that you should be able to meet some of those standards, which is the really nice thing about custom games is you can meet those standards in a written format.
Yeah.
When you're just hosting games, it's more vague, which can be a concern to people. And I think that's where a lot of that limitation comes in. Is they're like, this is a bit vague. I don't know what it's being upheld to, but that's part of being able to list as much information as you can so that way you can tell people, hey, this is what I'm holding up to.
As far as I've found, I don't think there's an actual character limit on how much you can actually put information-wise. So the more information you can give, the more you're helping your own players.
I think it's 500
Oh, really?
before it gets cut
I
off.
I think I've gotten over 500, at least on the Lord of the Rings one. I know I definitely exceeded 500 characters on that one.
Oh, I don't know necessarily on the front page, but I think on the back pages they're
Oh,
like
gotcha.
500. So again, upfront and personal, get as much information as you can, because I think that is, I believe, unlimited for the most part. Then again, I always recommend to people if you're doing any type of advertisement, try and keep it to a page.
Or at least make sure you can
Because
grab them in the first paragraph. Otherwise, they're not going to read the rest of
yeah,
it.
yeah, and the first sentence has all the meaning of what you want to impose on people. So catchy, organized, detailed. That's what you want. But that's that.
Do you want to go to the last topic I had on my list? The what do you want to see more of?
Yeah, what do we want to see more of? We'll close with that. How about that?
That sounds good.
Why don't you start?
I'd love to see a few more, like even in like I know we did Wisdom Save Weekend and a few other charity events. I'd love to see some sort of like digital convention come through us. I think it'd be a really good way just to get a bunch of games out at once and just really push forward that we're kind of it's picked up and it's a good format and I think it might be here to stay.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like an amazing idea to be able to have like, all right, let's organize some digital conventions and have like maybe different websites host different like game rooms essentially.
Because I know they've done that with a few of the gaming ones. They put out various like free demos. At least with Nintendo, they've put out free demos and such. They did all their conventioning with the Nintendo Directs, and I think that really worked out well for them. I don't think it takes away fully the magic from E3 and such, but I
Yeah.
think like the fact that people have adjusted to this already within the year, and a lot of stuff is working, and some stuff I know we all want to be able to go to our local comic shops and be able to see people in person and have our game groups at the table again. But I think also,
Don't get me wrong, I want that too.
yeah, but I think also like being able to connect with friends you've been apart with for years, or get your old gaming groups back together, or even just try out new games when there's not a lot of interest in your area, or if you don't have a local comic shop. I think a lot of this has been good for that community.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's really helped them in terms of growing and expanding. I think it would be really interesting and just kind of popped into my head. Imagine if one of those convention halls was like, hey, we have a 3D map of our convention hall. Let's host different game rooms and you can take a virtual tour through and go to different game rooms.
Oh, that would be cool.
And, like different panels and such. You can be like, oh, I want to stay or I want to go. Like,
Gotta get the Oculus up the snuff a bit.
yeah, I mean, hey, Oculus, Here's an idea. Virtual conference in your own space. That, hey, it's a thing. It's doable. We do have chat rooms like that.
Virtus asks how we see restrictions lifting impacting the activity across SPG.
That is a question for Devin.
Yeah, I don't think any of us can really predict the future. I do think that if a good thing is hit, I'm trying to think of a good example here. Sorry. Oh, I know one. This is going to be kind of, referencing the mayors. But one thing that they've done is they did virtual lines. People being able to have the app and get their tickets in advance. No need to go through the whole like stations, and that's one of the things I think is going to carry past the pandemic. I think if something is good enough, even if it is a case of virtual classes being a thing, I know that's a great option for a lot of the at-home learners or people who would have either been homeschooled because they want to be able to do mixed classes, or even cases like people who either through disability or trouble in general in the classroom weren't able to do that. The fact that they have that option now, or people who can work from home even though they have a chronic illness and they don't need to worry about that. I think a lot of things have really come out of this pandemic that are going to push forward in the future. And I don't really think we're much different than that. I think if we do well enough, I'm sure some degree of activity might peter out a little bit, especially once the first few weeks of the post-pandemic world open up again, so people can actually go outside and enjoy their friends and hug grandma again. But I think also a lot of what we've done here made some good communities. We've made some great connections. And there's definitely people who either in the short term or long term are really going to keep coming back to us.
Yeah. And I think also part of the consideration, at least for StartPlaying.Games, is that if I remember correctly, the website was started back in 2018, so this was well before the pandemic. And so we're kind of coming in from the pandemic side of it, where virtual games is pretty much everything that's going on, because there is no access to be able to do in-person games. But part of the system was designed to have professional GMs have a platform to be able to connect with groups that wanted somebody to come host a game for them.
Oh.
In the physical world as well too. Yeah, going back to the 3D world, in a physical space, and because you can see some of it in the templates that we work with. Probably, what are you bringing to the table? What are you bringing with you? Do you have a handicap access or need anything like that? That has to deal with the fact that there are physical games that you could still be doing potentially in the future. And I think that's just another outcome that when restrictions get more and more lifted and we have more access to be able to do that again, that will become a thing again. And it will just expand the platform. Because I think the virtual side is here to stay, because it's a very accessible platform. It's very much something that people like to do because it gives them a whole lot of options. So they have their group, they have their understanding of what they're trying to do, and I think they're going to continue to do that. And I absolutely think they should.
Yeah, and I think I know they're planning to do a replatform to port over some of these stuff and add more updates that such as being able to do rich text format, or I think what else are they talking? I know they've got a whole list of things they want to add in their what's it called? Not GitHub.
UI features, but the
the UI feature requests and such. There's a request list they have going. I don't think it's through GitHub. I think it's through something else, but
it's help something. I don't remember. I can look here.
But I know when they do the eventual replatform, they want to start implementing new features, and that's the things the current platform isn't not really allowing, but I think it's making it more difficult to implement.
Hello Next. Hello Next. That's what it's called.
Hello Next. Not to be confused with the food delivery service.
Yes. Hello Fresh.
Oh.
Sponsor.
Are we getting paid to plug them?
Yeah, that'd be nice. But no, I think that's a good part to close out on, and we hope to see you guys again.
Oh, well, I've got a game ready for next week. I know I've got you, possibly Sun, and do we have a third person who's interested?
We did. I don't remember who it was or where they went.
Yeah, unfortunately, I cannot tab over without taking our cameras off. So,
but if you're also a professional GM, you should come say hi. And if you want to join in on JM Swap, you can do that too.
Yes.
So we'll go ahead and close out there.
All right. You guys have a
This is
lovely night. I am Thom, Thom. I'm found on StartPlaying.Games. My Twitter handle is TomJTK. I run everything from D&D, 5th edition, 3rd edition, old style AD&D, Shadowrun, and honestly, if you find a system you want to try and you've not played before, I'll gladly learn it with you.
And I'm DM Ethan, or GM Ethan. You can also find me under Arcos Raid over at my Twitch channel and YouTube. I do a bunch of BattleTech stuff and other RPGs, and I just have fun and play games. So this has been GM Swap. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.